Okay. 2012 is not off to a good start. Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. This is Marville, and it is one of the worst comics ever made. This is one that's been on the back burner for a while, mostly because I didn't own a copy. Unfortunately, I do now. There are bad comics out there for various reasons, and some are bad because of different opinions on them. There are people out there who actually like Cry for Justice for reasons that completely elude me. But nobody, I mean nobody, is going to come rushing to the defense of this thing. This is a mess, and it starts off with why it was created at all. Supposedly, Marville came about because of a bet. Bill Hamas, or Hamas, I'm sorry, I don't know the pronunciation, who was president of Marvel at the time, made a bet with writer Peter David. The sales on Peter David's Captain Marvel series, and that's Marvel's Captain Marvel, not the DC one, comic books are confusing, were in heavy decline, and apparently it was believed that it was because the book was too self-referential and insular. Readers couldn't get into it because of backstory and references to other work. As such, the bet was centered around whose book would sell better in a promotion called You Decide. Because poor literacy creates books like Marville. Peter David launched a new Captain Marvel series from #1, and Bill Hamas made Marville. Marville is a 6-issue miniseries, kind of 7, but we'll get to that when we eventually get to issue 6, that starts off as a parody comic that evolved into a pseudo-philosophical treatise on the nature of God and the universe as seen by Bill Hamas, and just collapsed under its own stupidity. But what is Marville a parody of? Well, pretty much anything. And we'll see why Peter David won that bet as we dig into Marville #1. Judging from this cover, and the title of the comic, you'd assume this was a parody of Smallville, that Superman prequel show that lasted 10 years too long. But nope, this has nothing to do with that other than the title. Why is it called Marville? Hell if I know. Smallville had been around for a year before this came out, so it's not like the reference was all that timely. If it's meant to be funny, then I don't get the joke. Oh, and trust me, you will be hearing the words, "I don't get the joke," a lot in this review. I will give Marville one credit over all the other so-called humor comics that I've reviewed before. It's in color. Yeah, because that was my problem with Bimbos in Time. If the dinosaur poop at the end had been in color, I would have loved it! We start with An Insider's Guide to Marville #1. Here are a few things you need to know about comic books and about the real world to get the inside jokes in Marville #1. This page completely baffles me. The first section explains the backstories of Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman. This came out in 2002. The only people who would buy this damn thing would already know this stuff. And frankly, most people in the real world know who those characters are too. Bruce Wayne's parents were killed by a robber who left them to die in an alley. So now, as Batman, he seeks revenge by fighting crime. Hijinks to follow. Okay, that was kind of amusing. Now let's ruin the joke. Peter Parker's foster parent was killed by a robber whom Peter, as Spider-Man, failed to stop. Hijinks to follow. Doing the joke once is fine considering the dark tone of Batman stories. Doing it again with Spider-Man just makes you look desperate for a joke! Kal-El's parents placed him in a rocket ship before they were killed by the explosion of the planet Krypton. Now, as Superman, he fights for truth and justice, the American way to follow. It's funny because they didn't say hijinks that time. Now we get to the second section, which explains that DC Comics was run by Paul Levitz, it's not anymore, making any jokes on this matter, completely dated, who fights a never-ending battle to keep his business obscure. Okay, that's just an awkward sentence. Was Paul Levitz trying to prevent DC from becoming obscure? Was Paul Levitz trying to make DC obscure? What the hell? What businessman would want their company to be obscure? This is no small feat, as DC owns Batman and Superman, and they, in turn, are owned by AOL Time Warner, which ranks among the world's largest and most prominent entertainment, publishing, and merchandising companies. AOL folks show up all over Marville. And by that, they mean Ted Turner is the only one related to AOL that shows up, and nobody else does, so saying that is meaningless. It goes on to explain that before Time Warner was sold to AOL, it bought out a lot of Ted Turner's businesses. Now, the reason why this is so damn confusing for me, aside from the fact that I don't really care all that much about business deals between huge conglomerates, is that by explaining this, they pretty much tell what the joke is. I'm serious, there are jokes in this centered squarely around Ted Turner and selling out to AOL, or him starting the Goodwill games in the 80s. Or, in other words, they're explaining the joke!
If you have to explain a joke, there is no joke!
Then it goes on to explain about how Ted Turner married Jane Fonda? What the hell does that have to do with jokes about Time Warner? Oh, and by the way, they divorced in 2001, yet this comic depicts them as happily married. Again! This came out in 2002! That's like me doing a joke about how steamy Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck's relationship is getting. In 2010! But enough of the backstory. Let's get to the comic itself and why this thing is a mess. We open in the year 5002 AD at the opening of some guy's comic book store. Congratulations, your new store is huge! After 3,000 years, the comic industry finally recovered from Ron Perelman bankrupting Marvel. Who? Oh, the guy who bankrupted Marvel in the mid-90s and almost screwed over the entire industry. I had to look that up because I'm the kind of guy who cares more about the stories than the business side of things, as most casual fans are. So you can just imagine how hilarious that joke must have been to a casual fan. And wait, why the hell did we spend sentences on Ted Turner and Jane Fonda if the first joke out of this thing is about Ron Perelman? Anyway, meteors begin crashing down into the city and destroys the guy's comic shop. Though strangely, the two in front of the shop are just standing there, despite the fact that an explosion like that should send them flying. We cut to Ted Turner and Jane Fonda. Yeah, they're still alive in the year 5002. No, it isn't a joke or anything, it's just a part of the comic, and we never get an explanation why. I would have thought it was just a typo, like they meant 2005 instead of 5002, except all the visuals show a futuristic city, and the comic guy says it took 3,000 years to recover from Marvel's bankruptcy. Anyway, plot. Ted Turner says that a meteor shower is starting in 5 minutes, and a giant one will strike AOL on. Yes, they explain later that Earth was bought by Ted Turner, who then sold it to AOL, who renamed it AOL-on. You fools! You ruined the brand name recognition of Earth! Earth stays crunchy even in milk! No one knows anything about AOL-on! Also, the fashions in the future look really stupid. Apparently women wear red dresses with checkerboard highlights. Anyway, Ted Turner says it's the end of the world. Unless... Unless what?
Captain Planet! Captain Planet!
No, actually, Ted Turner suggests the much more rational plan of putting on baseball caps, walking out, yelling, "Wow!" and karate chopping a meteor. And it works! Look, everyone, the chop works! Let's all do this together and we can save the planet! You expect thousands of people to gather together and chant like Hollywood Indians? Are you nuts? Okay, this is apparently a reference to baseball controversies surrounding the use of Native Americans in baseball teams, and in particular the Atlanta Braves and their use of a chop motion. I actually was really confused by this originally until it was explained to me. You know why? Because I'm not a baseball fan, and I didn't know or care this was happening at the time. It's just a dated reference that will leave future readers utterly baffled. Why is it here? Because Ted Turner owns the Atlanta Braves. That still doesn't answer why he thought doing that to a meteor would work, but then again, Ted Turner is alive in the year 5002. Clearly he is some kind of robot that can take down meteors in a single stroke. By the way, did I mention that there's a crowd outside Ted Turner's house? Because, you know, when meteors start crashing into the planet, the first thing you should do is go to immortal Ted Turner's house. Or maybe Ted Turner is like Merlin and he ages backwards. The guy was 65 years old when this comic came out, and he doesn't look all that old in these panels. Anyway, the crowd starts following their lead when some random guy comes up. Cease and desist at once! Your chopping exaggerates and trivializes ancient Native American rituals for the sake of a stupid baseball game! You know, if somehow you do find this offensive, even though saving the planet should take priority, perhaps you should try punching them, or hitting them with a stick or something. They seem pretty weak. Hey, wait, if these meteors can blow up huge buildings and cause property damage, why is it so damn easy to chop them in half? Jane Fonda points out that they're trying to save the world, but the guy just says, "Nevertheless!" And I guess that's the end of the conversation, because the two just go back inside and no one tries anything further. The guy stands there, smug and smiling at this, before a meteor thankfully smashes his face in. At least I think it's the same guy, because he's wearing the same clothes, despite having a different facial structure and hairstyle than before. Jane Fonda points out that their child will die so young, and I wonder if this isn't supposed to be like their descendants, you know, like Ted Turner the 29th or something? I only say that because this Ted Turner has a decent mustache, whereas the real Ted Turner can barely get a mustache to form over his upper lip. Anyway, Ted's master plan is to use a rocket ship to send their son to Earth. Ted, honey, that's a harebrained scheme. That's what they all said about the TBS and CNN and TNT. And the Goodwill games. Wow, it's a good thing we had that opening expository page to point out that Ted Turner made the Goodwill games, or else I wouldn't have been able to laugh at that. And yeah, that joke, that's the only reason they mentioned the Goodwill games in that introduction. They're never brought up again! Jane Fonda points out that they are on Earth, thus his entire plan is stupid. Then a meteor hits and destroys the craft, and they carry on their conversation during this as if nothing is happening. Ted Turner gets the idea to instead send their son back in time. This is serious, and seriously, there is no such thing as time travel. And in all seriousness, you are not Yes Minister!
Serious repercussions.
Serious repercussions.
Of the utmost seriousness.
Yes, that is serious.
Jane Fonda doesn't believe that he has a time machine and asks how it works. I utilized dilithium crystals to alter the space-time continuum. These are just parts of an old PlayStation 1 and a couple of Atari controllers. That joke could have been funny if you forgot that this takes place in the year 5002. I guess there'll be a big PlayStation 1 nostalgia trip in 3,000 years. And yeah, maybe one could argue that it's farcical. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's just a goofy little reference. I'm sorry, but no. Even a farce has to follow some form of logic and structure, and a lot of the problems with these jokes and references stem back to setting this in the year 5002. And why? For that joke at the beginning about it taking 3,000 years to recover from Marville's bankruptcy? Hate to break it to you guys, but even if I had known who Ron Perelman was when walking into this, it wouldn't have been that funny to begin with.